As someone who studies economics and technological developments, it is always baffling to me why those seeking to save the Earth's environment want population reduction. While the idea that fewer people would equate to lower strain on the environment may sound good on the surface, reality is quite different. This goes hand in hand with another thing that many people are confused by: the fact that Elon Musk, someone who is deeply concerned with the environment and the survival of our species, is constantly pushing for population growth and reproduction in general. It has been historically demonstrated time and time again that recessions, economic stagnation, and austerity don't help the environment. In fact, we can see by economies such as the centrally planned Soviet Union, countries with slow or stagnant growth are generally the most wasteful and polluting of all. Many of the most poisoned and polluted places on Earth are in the former Soviet Union. It is curious, then, that so many people who champion environmental issues would include socialist policies or complete socialism as a linchpin of their plans. I would postulate that this is simply because they have bad intentions and their actual goals have nothing to do with the stated goals of their movements. While this may be true for those at the top, I doubt this is true for the rank and file, who through the cult of woke have come to actually believe what they are doing is for the greater good, and not for the personal enrichment and power of those already among the elite. For those with honest intentions, I would suggest that they support green socialism because they don't know what actually helps the environment. More than austerity, it is new, efficient, and clean technologies that help provide us with a healthy ecosystem and living environment. This is because affluent societies both desire improved living situations and have the economic breathing room to make individual choices that improve said environment, but also because dramatic changes require dramatic advances in technology. Technology does not advance along a set path. Innovation requires incentives and profit-seeking behavior. People do not just invent to invent. They invent for a purpose. Looking at the development of technology from a historical perspective, we can see that there are two things that spur periods of dramatic innovation: war, which gives people desperate, negative purpose, and economic growth. You do not see great technological developments among societies that are suffering financially. You see developments from societies that are expanding and people that have both the means to research and invent and the means to profit from their inventions. Thus, we can see a reflection of the basic incentive economic question in how technology is invented. The only options you have are negative incentives, such as those employed by socialist economies that do not respect property rights, or positive incentives, which is profit in capitalist economies. Negative incentive is invention in response to a threat, and a positive incentive is invention in response to economic growth. But how does this factor into the question of population expansion and contraction? Seldom ever do we observe strong and vibrant economies when the population is not growing, or when a population is aging out. While stagnant population is not exceedingly toxic for an economy, that is only true if the population is evenly distributed across the entire age range. That would mean most of the population is working at any given time. If the population is weighted too heavily in any one generation, and then that generation reaches retirement, you will experience a crash in the number of working individuals supporting the old and infirm. This is economic poison. This can result in a terrifying snowball effect of economic obliteration, because the most important factor when it comes to reproduction rates is a sense of hope among the young and young professionals. You will not be inclined to reproduce if you are depressed, do not see an economic future for yourself, and don't see one for your children either. This is made worse when there is a culture that has become diametrically opposed to traditional gender roles and two-parent homes. A breeding pair that both work and do not have time to raise children is seldom actually a breeding pair. As much as people today try to ignore biology, it is not possible in most cases for women to have a career first and then have children. This is part of the reason we are seeing reproduction rates among traditional communities around the world so much higher than those in worldly areas like the American coasts or Europe. For example, the Mormon communities in America have excellent reproduction rates, high rates of employment, and report far higher levels of life satisfaction than childless urban professionals. This is not a moral analysis, it is simply an economic observation. Traditional families are better for the economy. The population replenishment is only the beginning of the economic benefits of having children. You have entire industries dedicated to every life stage of children. Parents' work decisions and motivation changes when they have a family to take care of, and the average sense of hope for people of all ages increases within traditional family groups. Innovation, entrepreneurship, and career development are all higher among those who report higher senses of hope. This isn't to say hope itself is the reason for the changes, but rather the situation itself changes the nature of the prospects presented to the people in the family situation. It is a statistical fact that you are less likely to end up in jail or homeless if you are raised by a traditional two-parent home. So it can be seen that the two essential components to keep reproduction rates high is economic prospects and culture or values. Both of these things are at risk when demographics are disrupted. A lack of economic hope can cause changes in personal choices that result in fewer traditional homes or delayed families, which are far less effective at building the type of hope and reproduction rates necessary to build the economy and generate even more hope. Japan is an excellent example of this. The population is aging out, and as the problem gets worse and worse, and the younger generations feel more and more of a financial and social burden, they are less likely to form traditional families or even participate in society at all. Bad marriage and economic prospects can cause people to give up, which of course removes them from the economy and dating pool, making marriage and economic prospects for others even worse. While Elon Musk's advocacy of a growing population may appear reductive on the surface, he understands that in order to survive as a species, we need to become multiplanetary and interstellar. In order to do that, we need better technology and a stronger economy to both create and use that technology to expand beyond our planet. In order to have either of those, a growing and vibrant population is required. In his own words, a collapsing birth rate is the biggest danger civilization faces by far. This explains why leftists were so confused when Musk took this stance. It is well known that Musk believes in green technology, such as solar and electric vehicles, instead of combustion engines. So rather than his green agenda being in conflict with his views on population growth, they are actually consistent. A cleaner environment requires improving technology. Improving technology requires a growing economy. A growing economy requires a growing population, and a growing population requires personal and economic hope. The reason the entire system is starting to fail is because the very policies many fake environmental advocates have proposed directly destroy the foundations of the economy and personal hope. All carbon taxes do is hurt the economy with a tax while putting money in the government and special interests' pockets. Carbon credits act as a tool of megacorporations, serving as a barrier to entry and a bureaucratic and financial burden to compete against the big companies. Even if you are more green, they can just buy credits and use loopholes or counterproductive regulations to slap you down. And you can't fight it, because Amazon's legal team can beat you easily even if you're right. Socialist regulations block economic development. Remember, people like Greta Thunberg would have you believe that socialism will result in a cleaner, more carbon-free environment. But socialism has always and will always provide a dirtier environment than capitalism. Worst of all are societies that try to Frankenstein their system with parts of socialism and parts of capitalism sewn together like an unholy monster. Pseudo-socialist countries like China and India appear to engage in capitalist market production, but actually rely on special interest and rules exemptions based on party or political power to produce the most waste and economic destruction of any current society. This is because individual rights are not established at all in those environments, let alone established well enough for them to realize dumping garbage or chemicals infringes on the water rights of landholders and use of other people, not just in the country, but internationally. You are responsible for what you do with your property, and dumping it in a way where you know it will damage other people's health and property is a violation of the non-aggression principle and violates the rights of other people and is therefore a natural crime, the antithesis of a natural right. But as the most free countries in the world are nowhere near this level of understanding about natural rights, it is understandable why socialist countries have zero consideration for the unintended or sometimes intended consequences of what they see as expedient practices. The takeaway is that dirty economies are not a feature of capitalism, but of socialism and authoritarianism, because the incentive is to disregard individual rights for the benefit of the leaders, and there is no economic or social incentive to create better technologies or to replace old or bad technologies and processes. Nowhere is this more easily seen than when bureaucratic regulation prioritizes limiting old ways of doing things and simply reducing activity rather than trying new things that don't fit the current regulations. Anyone who has spent any time in government or business can give you many examples of rules preventing innovation because the rules were written with only the current systems and technology in mind. Since the rules don't account for experimentation, new tech often violates the rules, or the rules weigh the new tech negatively because the metric the rules are using is different than the actual downstream result when it comes to externalities or effects on other people and the environment. Nowhere is this more clear than when it comes to power generation. Modern nuclear designs are incredibly safe, have self-contained fuel pellets that can't melt down, and generate massive amounts of power with zero risk and zero environmental danger. Yet somehow, public perception and fear are based around old, Cold War-era nuclear plants. Most people think Fukushima was a modern nuclear plant that melted down, but it absolutely was not. Fukushima was built in 1967, and the Chernobyl nuclear plant was built in 1972. Yet despite being older than Chernobyl, many people think the Fukushima meltdown meant the safety of nuclear plants hadn't improved between 1986 and 2011. I personally wouldn't trust a plane built in 1967, let alone a nuclear plant. The point is that the left doesn't hold the answer for the problems they champion. It is the libertarian worldview that can solve environmental, economic, and technology problems that plague our world. Elon Musk is right. We need growing populations, but we also need to deregulate, detax, and grow our economy. Right now, we are suffering from a vicious cycle. The economic and social problems create fertile ground for more economic and social problems. We need to reverse that and create fertile ground for economic and social change that will revitalize not just our individual national economies, but our economies species-wide. Economic and social principles are universal across our species, and despite being a libertarian, I am highly critical of modern culture. While I do not believe in using the coercive and violent power of the state to force a change, because not only is that immoral, but it wouldn't work, I do firmly believe we are destroying ourselves with anti-family and anti-traditional attitude. Not only do modern social morals hurt population growth and the economy, but they push people towards statism and authoritarian rulers. They seek a god or parental figure in the state because they have rejected God and their own father figures. When the state tries to take the place of the father and God, the result is communism. We see this culturally with the cult of woke. All these things come together into an ecosystem that will either doom us or save us. And right now, we are on the path of doom.